Ben Hayes had been living on the frozen moon for 6 months. The place was called Titan 7, and it was one of the coldest places humans had ever tried to work. The moon went around a big gas planet in a star system far from Earth. Ben worked at a small research station, studying the weather and the atmosphere. Most days he was alone except for his computers and equipment. The temperature outside was always far below freezing. On a warm day it might be minus 100 degrees. On a cold day it dropped to minus 150 or worse. The moon had methane in its air, which made everything look hazy and strange. Ice covered the ground as far as anyone could see. Ben was not completely alone on Titan 7. About 200 kilometers south of his station, there was a colony of aliens called the Kixari. They looked like big insects with hard shells that sparkled like crystal. They were about the size of large earth dogs, and they walked on 6 legs. Their eyes were made of many small lenses, like the eyes of a fly, and they had 2 long feelers on their heads that moved when they talked. The Kixari had not trusted humans at first. They were careful around new species, especially ones that came from warm planets like Earth. But Ben had been patient. He learned some of their clicking language, even though his human mouth could not make all the sounds correctly. He traded supplies with them and helped fix their equipment when it broke. After a few months, they started to think of him as a friend. Ben was eating his lunch when the communication screen on his wall started beeping. He pressed the button and saw the face of Chitara, who ran the Kixari colony. Her translator box made her clicking sounds into human words. "Ben Hayes, we need your help," Chitara said. Her voice sounded worried. "One of our groups went out this morning to collect crystals. They took 4 young ones with them to teach them how to harvest. They should have come back 3 hours ago. They are not answering our calls." Ben put down his food and walked to his weather station. He looked at the screen showing temperature and wind speed. What he saw made his stomach feel tight. "There is a big storm coming," he said. The sensors did not catch it early enough. "When will it hit?" "The weather computers say less than 3 hours," Chitara answered. "Maybe only 2 hours. The temperature is already dropping fast." Ben looked at the numbers again. The storm was going to be bad. Really bad. The wind would blow at more than 200 kilometers per hour. The temperature would fall to minus 200 degrees or lower. Nothing could live outside in weather like that without good protection. "Where are they?" Ben asked. He was already walking to his equipment locker. "In the canyonlands to the north, about 40 kilometers from your station. Ben Hayes, you cannot go out there. Even humans cannot survive a storm like this." Ben pulled on his thick thermal suit. It was made of special materials that could keep heat inside even in extreme cold. He grabbed his emergency pack and started loading his tracked rover with supplies. "Send me their location," he said. "I am going to find them." "Ben Hayes, this is very dangerous. You could die." Ben stopped for a moment and looked at the screen. "Chitara, those are children out there. Someone has to help them. I am the closest person who has the equipment to do it. I have to try." There was silence on the other end. Then Chitara's voice came back softer than before. "You are a strange species, you humans. But you are good. I am sending the coordinates now. Please be careful." The location appeared on Ben's navigation screen. The Kixari group was in a canyon system 40 kilometers north of his station. They would be trapped there when the storm hit. The Kixari could handle normal cold on Titan 7 because of their hard shells, but extreme cold made them slow and sleepy. The young ones were even more at risk. If the temperature dropped too far, they would freeze solid. Ben climbed into his rover and started the engine. The machine was built for rough terrain and bad weather. It had thick treads instead of wheels, and its cabin was sealed tight against the cold. The heater was already running, keeping the inside at a temperature where Ben could breathe without his helmet. He drove out of the station garage and onto the frozen surface of the moon. His headlights cut through the methane haze. The ground was rough, covered with ice formations that stuck up like broken glass. Deep cracks appeared without warning. Ben had to drive carefully, using his sensors to find safe paths. The storm was building fast. Ben could see it on his weather display. The wind was already picking up speed. The temperature was dropping 5 degrees every 10 minutes. He had maybe 2.5 hours before conditions became deadly, maybe less. Ben pushed the rover as fast as he dared. The machine bounced over the rough ice and supplies rattled in the back. He had brought everything he could think of: thermal sheets, support poles, a portable heater, food, water, medical supplies, and tools. He did not know exactly what he would need, but he knew he needed to be ready for anything. As he drove, Ben thought about his training back on Earth. His instructor, Commander Lisa Grant, had taught all the colonial surveyors one important rule. When you are the only person who can help, you help. You do not wait for permission. You do not calculate the risks too carefully. You just go. Someone always has to be willing to go, Commander Grant had said. That is what makes us human. That is what makes us worth having in space. Ben remembered those words now as he drove toward the storm. He was scared. Any sane person would be scared. But fear was not a good enough reason to leave children to freeze to death. The canyon lands appeared ahead of him. They were a maze of deep cuts in the ice, carved by ancient methane rivers that had long since frozen solid. The walls were steep and treacherous. Ben's scanner showed 5 heat signatures about halfway down the main canyon. That had to be them. He drove as close to the edge as he could, then stopped the rover. The wind was howling now, strong enough to rock the vehicle. Ben could see methane crystals forming in the air, making everything sparkle like diamond dust. It would have been beautiful if it was not so dangerous. Ben put on his helmet and checked all his suit seals. Then he opened the door and stepped outside. The cold hit him like a hammer. Even through his suit, through all the insulation and heating elements, he could feel how wrong this temperature was. His suit computer said it was minus 160 degrees and still dropping. He grabbed a rope and some climbing gear from the back of the rover. Then he started down into the canyon, moving as fast as he could while still being safe. Every second counted now. The storm was almost here. The climb down into the canyon was hard. The ice walls were steep and slippery, and Ben had to move carefully to avoid falling. His suit was bulky, which made everything harder. But he kept going, one hand over the other, his boots finding small holds in the frozen surface. About halfway down, he saw them. 5 Kachari were huddled together in a small hollow in the canyon wall. The hollow was barely deep enough to be called a cave. It gave them almost no protection from the wind that was starting to scream through the canyon. The biggest Chichari was wrapped around 4 smaller ones, trying to cover them with his body. Ben recognized him from his visits to the colony. His name was Vrax, and he was one of the elders who taught the young ones about crystal harvesting. The 4 small Chichari had to be the children Chitara had mentioned. Ben reached the bottom of his rope and jumped the last meter to the ledge where they were sheltering. The sound of his boots on the ice made Vrax lift his head. The elder's eyes, usually bright and clear, looked dull and tired. "Human Ben," Vrax said. His translator made clicking sounds into words, but the device was crackling with static. "You should not be here. The storm will kill you too." Ben knelt down beside them and looked at the 4 young Kiksari. Their names were Tika, Riz, Kel, and Zin. He had met them once before when they visited his station with their teacher. They had been full of energy then, clicking excitedly and asking questions about Earth. Now they were barely moving. Their crystal shells, which usually sparkled with color, looked frosted and dull. "How long have you been here?" Ben asked. 4 hours. We tried to reach the colony, but the storm came faster than predicted. The young ones could not travel fast enough. We took shelter here, but it is not enough." Ben checked his suit computer. The temperature was now minus 170 degrees. The wind was blowing at 150 kilometers per hour. In another hour, maybe less, it would get much worse. The Shiksari would freeze solid if they stayed here. Even his rover could not protect them all, and the journey back would take too long in these conditions. "We are not going back to the rover," Ben said, "and we are not going to freeze. We are going to make a shelter right here." Vrax's feelers moved in confusion. "A shelter? Here? There is nothing to build with. Only ice and rock." Ben was already opening his equipment pack. "Then we build with ice and rock. Watch me." The young Kiksari turned their many-lensed eyes toward Ben. They were too cold to move much, but he could see curiosity in the way they watched him. They had heard stories about humans. Now they were going to see what humans could do. Ben pulled out his plasma cutter. It was a tool he used for cutting ice samples, but now he was going to use it for something more important. He walked to the canyon wall right next to where the Kikshari were huddled. The ice here was old and thick, compressed by time and pressure into something almost as hard as stone. He turned on the plasma cutter and touched it to the ice. The tool hummed and glowed, and the ice began to melt and vaporize. Ben cut in a straight line, then another, working fast but steady. He was carving into the wall, making a cave where there had been none before. Vrax watched in amazement. "You are making a home from the ice itself," Exactly, Ben said, not stopping his work. On Earth, my ancestors did this thousands of years ago. They lived through ice ages by building shelters. Sometimes they used animal skins and wood, sometimes just snow and ice. The idea is always the same. Make a space that keeps out the wind and cold, then make heat inside that space. The hole in the ice wall grew deeper. Ben cut away chunks and pushed them aside. After 20 minutes, he had carved out a space about 3 meters deep and 2 meters high. It was rough and uneven, but it would work. He motioned for Vrax to help the young ones inside. The elder moved slowly, his legs stiff from the cold, but he managed to guide the 4 children into the new cave. They huddled together in the back, their bodies pressed close for warmth. Little Zin, the smallest, made a weak chirping sound. Ben worked on the entrance next. He took the blocks of ice he had cut away and began stacking them like bricks. He used his plasma cutter to melt the edges slightly, then pressed them together. In the extreme cold, they froze solid almost instantly, forming a wall. He left a small opening at the top for air to flow through, but blocked most of the entrance. The wind was screaming now, loud enough to make his helmet vibrate. Snow and ice particles flew through the air like bullets. Ben's suit computer showed the temperature at minus 180 degrees. He had to work faster. From his pack, he pulled out sheets of aerogel insulation. This was special material, light as air but able to block heat from escaping. He started covering the inside of the ice cave with it, attaching it to the walls with adhesive strips. The silver material made the cave look like the inside of a strange cocoon. Next came the heater. It was a small fusion unit, powered by the same kind of reaction that made stars shine. The device was not much bigger than a shoebox, but it could put out tremendous heat. Ben placed it in the center of the cave and turned it on. A gentle warmth began to spread through the space. He sealed the last gap in the ice wall just as the storm reached its full power. The wind outside sounded like a monster trying to tear the world apart. The temperature dropped to minus 190 degrees, then minus 200. But inside the shelter, the fusion heater was doing its job. The temperature was minus 50 and rising slowly. Ben finally sat down, his body exhausted from the hard work. He had been moving non-stop for almost an hour, and even his suit's support systems could not completely remove the strain, but they were safe. For now. Vrax looked at Ben with something like wonder in his compound eyes. You built this? In less than 1 hour? With only the tools you carried? Had to, Ben said simply. Could not let you freeze. The young Kichari were already looking better. As warmth returned to their bodies, they began to move more freely. Tika, the bravest of the 4, crawled closer to Ben and looked at him carefully. Are all humans like you? She asked in a small, clicking voice. Ben smiled behind his helmet. Most humans try to help when they can. It is part of who we are. Our homeworld, Earth, was not an easy place to live. We had to learn to survive cold and heat, floods and droughts. We learned to build shelters and make fire and help each other. After doing that for thousands of years, it became part of us. Riss, another young one, spoke up. The teachers say humans are dangerous. They say your species fights wars and destroys things. Ben nodded slowly. That is true. Humans have done bad things. We have fought and destroyed. But we have also built and helped and protected. We are not perfect. But when someone needs help, most humans will try. That is what matters right now. The temperature inside the shelter reached minus 20 degrees. The Kiksari were able to move normally now, though they were still tired and hungry. Ben knew they were not safe yet. The storm would last for at least 2 days. He had to keep them warm, fed, and hopeful until rescue could come. The shelter was holding, but Ben knew they faced a bigger problem now. The storm would last at least 2 days, maybe longer. 5 living beings needed food, water, and warmth to survive that long. Ben had supplies, but they were designed for human needs, not for alien biology. He opened his emergency pack and took inventory. 6 days of human rations, compressed into bars and powder. A water recycling unit that could turn moisture from breath and sweat back into drinking water. Medical supplies including bandages, antibiotics, and biosealant for wounds. A repair kit with adhesives and patches. And the fusion heater, which had enough power for about 2 days of constant use. Ben looked at the 4 young Kiksari and their teacher. The children were recovering from the cold, but they looked hungry and scared. Little Zin kept making small chirping sounds, pressing close to Vrax for comfort. Vrax, Ben said, what do your people eat? Can you digest human food? The elder's feelers moved thoughtfully. We consume crystal formations that contain minerals and organic compounds. The crystals we were harvesting today would have fed us for a week. But we also can process certain proteins and sugars, though not the same ones humans use. Our digestive system is different. Ben pulled out one of his ration bars and looked at it. The label listed proteins, carbohydrates, fats, vitamins, and minerals. He had studied Kiksari biology during his time on the moon, reading the files in his station's computer. Their bodies needed silicon compounds and certain metals that human food did not have much of. But they could process some Earth-based proteins if they had to. I can make something, Ben said. He opened his medical kit and found the mineral supplements he carried for emergencies. These included trace metals and compounds that might work for Kiksari digestion. He broke open a ration bar, added some of the mineral powder, and mixed it with warm water from his suit's recycling system. The result was a thick paste that did not look very good, but it had nutrients in it. Ben offered some to Vrax first. The elder tasted it carefully, his mouth parts working slowly. After a moment, he made an approving click. It is strange, but I can digest it. It will keep us alive. Ben made portions for all 5 Kiksari, using up 2 of his ration bars. He watched as they ate slowly, their bodies starting to recover from the ordeal. The young ones looked better already, their crystal shells beginning to regain their sparkle in the heater's warm glow. But Ben noticed something wrong with Zin. The smallest child was not eating much, and she kept one of her legs pulled close to her body. Ben moved closer and asked Vrax if he could examine her. When he looked carefully, Ben saw the problem. Zin's crystal shell had cracks in it. The extreme cold had caused the material to contract too fast, and stress fractures had formed along her leg and part of her body. The cracks were not deep, but they were letting cold air reach the soft tissue underneath. If they got worse, Zin could be seriously hurt. I can fix this, Ben said. He pulled out his biosealant, a gel designed to repair human wounds but also useful for other materials. He carefully applied it to the cracks in Zin's shell. The gel hardened quickly, forming a flexible seal that would hold until proper medical care was available. Zin chirped softly as Ben worked, but she held still, seeming to understand that he was helping her. When he finished, she looked up at him with her large compound eyes and touched his hand gently with one small leg. "Thank you, human Ben," she said in her small voice. Ben felt a warm feeling in his chest that had nothing to do with the heater. "You are welcome, Zin. You are very brave." With everyone fed and Zin's injuries treated, Ben turned his attention to keeping them all occupied. The storm outside was at full fury now, the wind screaming and the temperature at -205 degrees. They could not go anywhere, and boredom could be as dangerous as cold for young minds. "Would you like to hear stories about Earth?" Ben asked. The 4 young Kichari clicked excitedly. Even Vrax seemed interested, his feelers perking up with curiosity. Ben began to tell them about his homeworld. He described oceans of liquid water, huge things that covered most of the planet's surface. He told them about forests with trees that grew hundreds of meters tall, about deserts where sand stretched to the horizon, about mountains covered in snow. The Kiksari listened with wonder. Their homeworld was very different from Earth. It had never had liquid water or soft winds or green growing things. To them, Earth sounded like a fantasy world, almost impossible to believe. But Earth was also dangerous, Ben continued. Long ago, before humans built cities and machines, our ancestors had to survive in a world that tried to kill them. There were times when ice covered much of the land, times when the air was full of ash from volcanoes, times when diseases spread and food was hard to find. But humans learned to adapt. We learned to make fire for warmth and cooking. We learned to build shelters from whatever materials we could find. We learned to work together to survive. Tika, the brave one, asked a question. "Is that why humans explore space? Because you learn to survive hard times?" Ben thought about that. Maybe we explore because we are curious. We want to see what is out there. But I think our history of surviving makes us good at exploring. We know how to deal with problems. We know how to adapt to new places. And we know that sometimes you have to help others even when it is hard or dangerous. Kel, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "The other species in the Federation say humans are reckless. They say you take too many risks." "That might be true," Ben admitted. "We do take risks, but we also calculate those risks. I knew coming out here in the storm was dangerous, But I also knew that you would die if someone did not help. So I asked myself which was more important, my safety or your lives. The answer was easy. Vrax spoke then, his voice full of respect. In our culture, we have a saying. The one who protects the young protects the future. You have done this, Ben Hayes. You have risked yourself for our children. This is the highest honor among the Kiksari. You will be remembered. The hours passed slowly. Ben monitored the shelter's systems, making small adjustments to keep everything running smoothly. He taught the young Kiksari simple games using pieces of ice as tokens. He showed them how to do basic math, turning their waiting time into learning time. The fusion heater kept the shelter at a comfortable -10 degrees, warm enough for the Kiksari to function normally. The ice walls held strong against the wind outside. The aerogel insulation kept precious heat from escaping. Everything Ben had built was working exactly as it should. As the first day turned into night, the young Kiksari began to get sleepy. Vrax arranged them in a sleeping cluster, their bodies pressed together for additional warmth and comfort. This was how Kiksari children always slept, in groups with adults watching over them. Little Zin, before she closed her eyes, crawled over to Ben and curled up against his leg. Her small body was warm now and the cracks in her shell were sealed and stable. She made a soft purring sound. Something Vrax explained meant she felt safe and happy. Ben gently rested his hand on her back, careful not to disturb her rest. Outside, the storm continued its assault on the frozen moon. Inside the shelter, 5 Kiksari and 1 human rested together, kept alive by human ingenuity and determination. Ben stayed awake, watching over them all, making sure the heater kept running and the shelter stayed intact. He thought about Commander Grant's words again. Someone always has to be willing to go. That is what makes us human. He was glad he had gone. Whatever happened next, he had given these children a chance to survive. That was enough. The second day in the shelter began with a problem. Ben woke from a light sleep to find that the fusion heater's power indicator was blinking yellow. The unit was consuming energy faster than predicted. Ben checked the readings and did some quick calculations in his head. They had maybe 30 hours of heat left, not the 48 he had planned for, and the storm was still raging outside. He did not say anything to the others at first. Vrax and the young Kiksari were still sleeping, exhausted from their ordeal. Ben adjusted the heater to a more efficient setting, dropping the temperature inside the shelter from -10 degrees to -15. It was a small change, but it would extend their power by several hours. The Kiksari could handle the slightly colder temperature better than humans could anyway. When the others woke, Ben prepared their morning meal. He was running low on rations now. He had 2 days of food left for himself, but he was sharing everything with the Kiksari. That meant everyone would be eating less. Ben made sure the young ones got full portions while he and Vrax took smaller amounts. Tika noticed. "Human Ben, you are not eating much. You need food too." "I will be fine," Ben said. "Growing bodies need more nutrition than adult bodies. You 4 need to eat well so you stay strong." After breakfast, Ben checked on Zin's shell repairs. The biosealant was holding perfectly, and the cracks showed no signs of spreading. The little one seemed much better, moving around the shelter with more energy. She had clearly bonded with Ben, following him around and asking questions about everything. "Why do humans wear suits?" she asked. "Your body cannot handle cold?" "That is right," Ben explained. "Humans evolved on a warm world. Our normal body temperature is 37 degrees Celsius. If we get too cold, we die. If we get too hot, we die. We need to stay in a very specific temperature range. That is why we build things like suits and shelters, to create the environment we need wherever we go." Riss was curious now, too. "That sounds hard. Why not just stay on worlds that are already the right temperature?" Ben smiled. "Because there are not enough of those worlds. And because humans are explorers. We want to see new places, learn new things, meet new people. Like you. If I had stayed on a warm world, I never would have met the Kiksari. And right now I am very glad I came to Titan 7. Kel, the thoughtful one, had been listening quietly. "The Federation teachers say humans spread too fast. They say you claim too many worlds. Some species are afraid of humans." Ben nodded. This was not an easy topic, but he believed in honest answers. "I understand why some species feel that way. Humans do expand quickly. We have a lot of energy and ambition. Sometimes we make mistakes. But most humans do not want to hurt anyone. We just want to find our place in the galaxy. We want to build, explore, and make friends with other species. Like the Kiksari. Brax had been listening to this conversation. The Federation Council debates this issue often. Some species want to limit human expansion. They worry about your military power, your rapid population growth, your hunger for resources. But others see value in humanity. They see your ability to adapt, your willingness to take risks, your talent for solving problems. This debate will shape the future of the Federation. What do you think, Elder Vrax? Ben asked. Do you think humans should be in the Federation? The old Kixari was quiet for a long moment. His feelers moved slowly, a sign he was thinking carefully. I think, he finally said, that any species willing to risk their life to save children they barely know deserves respect. I think any species that can build warmth from ice and make food from nothing has much to offer. I will speak for humanity when I return to the colony. My voice will carry weight in the council. The day continued slowly. Ben taught the young Kixari more about earth science and mathematics. He showed them how to calculate volume and surface area, using the shelter itself as an example. He explained how insulation worked, and why materials like aerogel were so effective at blocking heat transfer. The children absorbed everything eagerly. Kixari, Ben learned, had excellent memories. They could remember facts and numbers much better than most humans. Tika could recite back everything Ben had told them about thermodynamics without missing a single detail. As the afternoon wore on, Ben became aware of another problem. The air in the shelter was starting to feel stale. The ventilation hole at the top of their ice wall was working, but it was getting partially blocked by ice buildup from the storm. Ben would need to clear it, which meant going outside briefly. He explained this to Vrax, who looked concerned. The storm is still very strong. Is it safe? I will only be outside for a few minutes, Ben said. My suit can handle it. But I need to do this, or we will have trouble breathing. He suited up carefully, checking every seal twice. Then he cleared the ice blocks from the entrance enough to squeeze through. The moment he stepped outside, the wind almost knocked him over. The storm was still at full fury, screaming around the canyon with terrible force. The temperature was minus 210 degrees. Ben clipped his safety line to a metal anchor he had installed in the ice wall. Then he climbed carefully to the ventilation hole and used his plasma cutter to clear away the ice buildup. It only took 3 minutes, but by the time he climbed back down and squeezed back into the shelter, he was shaking from the cold. Even his suit had limits. Zin rushed over to him, chirping in distress. You are hurt? Just cold, Ben said, his teeth chattering slightly. I will warm up in a minute. The little Kixari pressed against his leg, trying to share her body heat. It was a small gesture, but it touched Ben deeply. He sat down and let the heater warm him while Zin stayed close. That evening, as the second day turned to night, Ben noticed that the wind outside was finally decreasing. Not by much, but the change was there. He checked his weather instruments, which were still connected to his suit computer. The storm was beginning to weaken. By tomorrow afternoon, it might be calm enough for rescue vehicles to reach them, but that created a new problem. The fusion heater now showed only 18 hours of power remaining. They would run out of heat before rescue arrived. Ben did some calculations, trying to find a solution. He could lower the temperature more, but that would put stress on the young Kixari. He could shut down the heater for periods of time, but that was risky too. In the end, he made a decision. Vrax, I need to tell you something. Our heater is running low on power. We have about 18 hours left. Rescue probably will not arrive for at least 24 hours. The elder's feelers drooped. What can we do? We can make it work, Ben said firmly. We will lower the temperature gradually, just a few degrees at a time. We will huddle together for warmth. We will use the insulation blankets I brought. We will ration the heater's power carefully. We can do this. The young Kixari had heard this conversation. They looked scared, but they also looked determined. They had survived this long because of Ben. They trusted him to get them through the final stretch. We can do this, Tika repeated, her voice strong. Human Ben has kept us safe. We will stay safe together. That night, they huddled close together in the center of the shelter. Ben wrapped them all in the emergency blankets from his pack. The temperature dropped to minus 20 degrees, then minus 25, but they managed. The young ones slept fitfully, sometimes waking from the cold, but Ben and Vrax stayed awake, watching over them. Ben thought about his life, about all the choices that had led him to this frozen moon, to this ice shelter, to this moment. He could have taken a safe job on Earth or on one of the colony worlds, but he had wanted to explore, to see new places, to make a difference. Now, sitting in a cave carved from ice, surrounded by alien children who trusted him with their lives, Ben knew he had made the right choices. Whatever happened tomorrow, he had done something that mattered. He had saved lives. He had shown the galaxy what humans could be at their best. Outside, the storm began to die down. Inside, 5 Kixari and 1 human waited for dawn and the hope of rescue. The third morning arrived with silence. After 2 days of constant howling wind, the sudden quiet felt strange. Ben carefully opened the entrance to their shelter and looked outside. The storm had passed. The sky was clear, showing the gas giant that Titan 7 orbited. The surface of the moon was transformed, covered in fresh formations of frozen methane that glittered in the weak sunlight. The temperature was still dangerous at -170 degrees, but it was better than the -200 they had endured during the storm's peak. More importantly, rescue vehicles could fly in these conditions. Ben activated his emergency beacon, the strongest signal his suit could send. Then he checked the fusion heater. 6 hours of power left. They had cut it very close, but they had made it through the worst. Inside the shelter, the Kixari were waking up. They looked tired and hungry, but alive. Little Zin crawled over to Ben immediately, chirping a greeting. The other young ones gathered around him too, their energy returning now that the danger had passed. "The storm is over," Ben told them. "Rescue will come soon." "We made it," Tika clicked excitedly. "We survived because of you, human Ben. You saved us." "We survived because we worked together," Ben corrected gently. "Elder Vrax kept you warm before I arrived. You young ones stayed brave and followed instructions. I just provided the tools and knowledge. We all did our part." Vrax made a sound that was the Kixari version of a laugh. "You are modest, Ben Hayes. This is a human trait I have not seen before. Most species would boast of such an achievement." "You deflect praise," Ben shrugged. "Bragging never helped anyone survive. Better to focus on what still needs to be done." What needed to be done now was wait. Ben prepared one more meal using the last of his rations. The food was almost gone, but rescue should arrive before hunger became a serious problem. He made sure the young ones ate first, then shared what remained with Vrax. He kept barely anything for himself. About 2 hours later, Ben's suit computer detected incoming vehicles. 3 rescue ships appeared over the canyon rim. One was from Ben's research station, a human transport. The other 2 were Kixari vessels, larger and more organic-looking than human designs. The ships landed near the canyon edge and figures began climbing down. Ben recognized Chitara, the colony administrator leading a group of Kixari. From the human ship came 2 of Ben's colleagues, Peter Kane and Linda Shaw, both wearing full environmental suits. When Chitara reached the shelter and saw that all 5 Kixari were alive and moving, she made a sound of pure relief. She rushed forward and touched feelers with Vrax, then checked each of the young ones carefully. "They are well," Vrax told her. "Cold and hungry, but well. Ben Hayes built us this shelter. He kept us warm and fed. He repaired Zin's shell when it cracked. He told us stories and taught us science. He gave us his own food and stayed awake to watch over us. He saved our lives." Chitara turned to Ben. Her compound eyes seemed to shimmer with emotion. "Ben Hayes, you did what should have been impossible. You went into a killing storm and brought our children back alive. The Kixari owe you a debt we can never fully repay." Peter Kane was examining the shelter with professional interest. "Ben, this is incredible work. You carved this cave, insulated it, and maintained livable conditions for 3 days with just your emergency kit. This is going to be a case study in survival engineering." Linda Shaw was less impressed with the engineering and more concerned with Ben's condition. "Ben, you look exhausted. When did you last eat a full meal?" "I shared everything with them," Ben said simply. "They needed it more." "That is exactly like you," Linda said, shaking her head but smiling. "Always putting others first. Come on, let's get everyone to safety and warmth." The journey back to the colonies was slow but safe. The young Kixari rode in their people's ships, surrounded by medical staff and relieved parents. Ben rode in the human transport where Peter and Linda made him drink warm soup and rest. When they reached the Kixari colony, Ben saw something he had not expected. The entire population had gathered to greet them. Hundreds of Kixari lined the landing area, their crystal shells glittering in the light. They made a sound together, a clicking harmony that Ben's translator struggled to interpret. It was a song of welcome and gratitude. The young ones were taken to the medical center immediately for checkups. The doctors confirmed what Ben already knew. All 4 children were healthy, with no permanent damage from their ordeal. Zin's shell cracks were healing well thanks to Ben's quick treatment. They would make full recoveries. 3 days later, the Kikshari held a formal ceremony in their main gathering hall. Ben was asked to attend, along with the other humans from the research station. The hall was beautiful, carved from natural crystal formations that filled the space with colored light. Chitara spoke first, addressing the assembled crowd. 3 days ago, we faced tragedy. 4 of our young ones and elder Vraks were trapped in the northern canyons when the great storm came. We believed they would die. No one could survive such cold, such wind, such fury. She paused, letting the weight of those words sink in. But one being refused to accept their death. Ben Hayes, human scientist, heard our call for help. He drove into the storm.
He found our people.
And when he could not bring them to safety, he built safety around them. He carved a home from ice. He shared his food and warmth. He stayed awake to protect them. He gave everything he had to keep them alive. Chitara turned to face Ben directly. Ben Hayes, you have shown us what humanity truly is. Not the warriors we feared, not the conquerors we worried about, but protectors and builders. You have earned the highest honor the Kikshari can give. Come forward. Ben walked to the center of the hall, feeling awkward with all the attention. Chitara held something in her hands, a crystal formation unlike any Ben had seen before. It was shaped like a 6-pointed star and seemed to glow with internal light. This is the Star of the Hive, Chitara explained. It has been given only 17 times in our 5,000-year history. It marks one who has saved our children, who has protected our future. You are the first non-Kikshari to receive this honor. Wear it with pride, Ben Hayes. You have earned it. She placed the crystal star on Ben's chest, where it attached itself to his shirt with some kind of biological adhesive. The entire assembly of Kikshari made that clicking harmony sound again, louder this time. It was their version of cheering. Elder Varak spoke next. I am old. I have seen much in my long life, but I have never seen courage like this. Ben Hayes asked for nothing. He expected no reward. He simply saw beings who needed help and gave everything to provide it. This is the measure of true character. The 4 young ones came forward then, each carrying something. Tika presented Ben with a data crystal containing detailed recordings of Kikshari history and culture. Riss gave him a piece of the crystal they had been harvesting when the storm trapped them, now polished and engraved with his name. Kel offered a traditional Kikshari tool, beautifully crafted, and little Zin, the smallest, gave Ben a woven band made from ice fiber that would never melt. She had made it herself. To remember us, Zin said softly. To remember that you saved us. Ben knelt down to Zin's level. I will never forget you. Any of you. You were all very brave. The ceremony concluded with a feast, though Ben ate cautiously, still getting used to the fact that he had enough food again. The Kikshari celebrated late into the night, their relief and joy filling the hall with clicking songs and the glow of their crystalline bodies. But the story did not end there. News of the rescue spread quickly through the Federation communication networks. Within a week, it reached the Federation Council itself. The council was a gathering of representatives from all member species, and they had been debating humanity's role in the Federation for months. The Kikshari delegation, led by Chitara and Elder Vrax, presented a formal statement. We have seen humanity at its best. We have witnessed one human risk everything to save our children. We believe humans deserve full membership in the Federation. We believe they will be valuable partners in building a better galaxy. We vote in favor of their admission. Other species that had been uncertain about humanity began to reconsider. If the cautious Kikshari trusted humans, perhaps the concerns about human expansion and aggression were overblown. Perhaps humanity's ability to adapt and protect was more important than their capacity for war. Ben knew none of this at first. He had returned to his research station and gone back to work, studying weather patterns and atmospheric data. But 3 months later, he received a message from Commander Lisa Grant herself. Lieutenant Hayes, your actions on Titan 7 have had consequences you probably did not anticipate. The Federation Council has granted humanity full membership status. We are no longer probationary members. We have full voting rights and full access to Federation resources. The Kikshari testimony about your rescue of their children was a major factor in this decision. You have done more than save 5 lives, Ben. You have changed humanity's future in the galaxy. Well done. Ben read the message twice, trying to process it. He had just been trying to help some children caught in a storm. He had not thought about politics or Federation membership. He had just done what seemed right. But perhaps that was the point. Perhaps that was exactly what had convinced the other species. Humans did not always calculate the political benefits of their actions. They just helped when help was needed. Years later, when Ben was much older and working as an instructor for new colonial surveyors, he would tell his students about the shelter in the ice. He would describe the storm, the fear, the cold, and the small victories that kept everyone alive. And he would always end the story the same way. We are human. We build shelters in the storm. We share our food with the hungry. We protect those who need protection. Not because it benefits us, not because we want glory, but because it is who we are. That is what makes us worth having in this galaxy. That is what makes us human. The crystal star from the Kixari remained on his wall for the rest of his life, along with the woven band Zin had made. He never forgot those 3 days on Titan 7. He never forgot the 4 young Chixari who had trusted him with their lives. He never forgot that sometimes the most important thing you can do is simply be there when someone needs help. And across the galaxy, whenever humans arrived on new worlds, other species began to understand. These beings from Earth who had survived their own world's fury carried something special into the stars. Not conquest or domination, but protection and compassion. They were builders of shelters, makers of warmth, and extenders of helping hands. The blizzard had trapped the cubs. The human had made a shelter and kept them cozy. And in doing so, he had shown the galaxy what humanity meant when they said, "We are here to help."